Welcome to the Total Soccer Show and part 4 of 5 of our 2026 MLS season previews. On this episode, we're looking at how the West might be won by going in depth on Houston, the Galaxy, LAFC, Minnesota, Portland, and Real Salt Lake. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today for a little chat is Taylor Rockwell. Hello, Taylor.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. I like the roll R on Real Salt Lake. You gave them their proper billing, I think. Is that their proper billing? I'm never quite sure.
Indeed. Makes it more royal if you roll it. Mm-hmm. It's true.
Very royal over there.
Now, Utah, famous for that kind of thing. Hello, Joe Lowry. How are you?
Hey, I am great. This is one of my favorite weeks of shows of the year. Let's crush this. Let's do good work. I don't know where I'm going with this, but let's get this thing on the roll, shall we?
One of your favorite weeks, you say?
Yeah.
What other weeks do you like, Joe?
Wow, thank you for following up with that and not whatever travesty that response was on my part. I don't know where my head's at today. Other favorite weeks. World Cup preview week. The week after the World Cup when I remember who I am again. Any of those weeks, probably one of those. Shark Week.
I used to like Shark Week, but it changed, man. It changed.
Did they get different sharks? What happened? I don't
They're
know.
not even sharks anymore. They're paid actors. Yeah.
Disappointing.
Yeah.
Nothing's real anymore.
Nothing's
Glad to
real.
hear. I'm an infrastructure week guy myself. Jeff Rutter, how are you?
I'm good. My favorite week is the week you guys let me do 5 shows. How do you do this every week? This is
Yeah, we do
bananas.
6. Joke's on you.
Bless your souls.
Hello, Graham Ruthven. How are you?
Hello, I'm very well. I'm looking forward to previewing. I believe it's Real Salt Lake because that Real Madrid affiliation never actually came through. So, you were wrong to roll your R like that, Ryan Bailey. I'm sorry to tell you.
My apologies.
owned.
I withdraw my rolling.
Yeah.
We'll get to them later. And their fame for inventing the grid traffic system, my favourite fact about
You're
Real.
never going to let that go.
I will never let it go. Sorry, you're going to make a shirt about it. I'm going to talk about it for the rest of days. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show, by the way, is where you'll get our bonus content. You'll get bonus episodes, bonus video, and access to our Discord server. All the cool kids are hanging out in there. Many of those cool kids are now part of the TSS Scouting Network, our listener-led network of scouts. You can become a scout with us and assess one of the best young players in the world. You can pick one, we can assign you one, and your scouting reports will be used on this here feed and on our bonus feed every single week. I think starting next week. That might be one of Joe's favourite weeks coming up. We will see. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show to sign up. Thank you very much to everybody who does so. All right, you probably know the gist of this MLS episode so far. We're going to cover what last season looked like for every team, the 2026 roster changes, manager and tactics, key players, and our very specific predictions trademark. We're going to start off with the Houston Dynamo. Jeff Root is going to tell us all about them, but not before Jeff. Fact. Here it comes. Houston
Gone.
has an underground tunnel system stretching over 6 miles and 95 city blocks beneath downtown, connecting office buildings, restaurants and shops so people can avoid that Texas heat. Average temperatures of 95 degrees in the summer. So, will the Dynamo be able to get themselves above ground and above the playoff line this season?
Hey! Oh, that was nice. We're already rolling. Houston Dynamo, they're cooking something, but the burner isn't above a simmer. But sometimes those are the best dishes, and that is exactly what Pat Onstad is hoping will end up resolving from this. When we last left them, the 2020s have been a really weird decade for the Houston Dynamo. From 20 to 22, they were exactly 25th in Major League Soccer. They were operating at the doldrums of the table, and then Ben Olsen comes in, turns things around. They finish 4th in 23, 5th in 24, both in the Western Conference, and then they plummet back to 22nd in the Shield standings last year. It was a really difficult year for them, and it wasn't just difficult in terms of results. It was difficult in front of the eye test. I think that they dropped off of a lot of people's like MLS season pass sort of watch lists, just in terms of the fun of it when Hector Herrera left and Coco Carrasquilla left, and it was just really clear that although they had Jack McGlynn, they needed to evolve the thing and bring in some talent, and that's kind of what they've changed over the offseason, is we've actually seen an influx of players, and in order to have an influx, you need to have an egress, and who is out? 21 players from last year's roster. Now, this is a league that has a lot of turnover. If you go to the MLS transfer trackers, you will often find that teams have 6 to 8 to 10 players leaving at the end of an offseason when you have, like, contracts declined, options not picked up, all these things. Houston bled 21 players from a maximum 30-team squad. Just remarkable the amount of turnover they've been able to do. And so when you look at some of the marquee names who did leave, I mean, Bassi was an attacker that they tried for a few years, never quite stuck. Franco Escobar was pretty vital in just kind of popping up in spots for them along defense, sometimes liability. Damian Lowe, defensive cover. Sergio Santos was better at other stops than he was with Houston. The big one is Brooklyn Reigns, who was traded to New England. And I'm imagining they just didn't see a stylistic compatibility when you look at Brooklyn Reigns alongside Jack McGlynn for the long haul. So better to kind of cash in and, rotate through. The top line items is I like a lot of the replacements more than I like the guys that they're replacing, just in terms of how they'll fit a Ben Olsen system. So that's really all you can ask for. Guilherme is one of the new designated players. He's arriving from Santos in Brazil. Fun fact, he scored their 13,000th goal. That's all time, not of the season. I know they play a lot of games down in Brazil.
Pele scored 12,000 of them, right?
Right.
Yes.
And he just had to chip in the final 1,000. Neymar actually did some of it, but he did the rest.
Some of it.
Oh,
He was really
Pele's
good
gonna
at
score
chipping.
13,000.
Ah.
Got to stay on that one.
He
Can't
just
have
can't
anything.
stop.
Yeah.
He can't stop. He 4 goals and 7 assists in 2025. He was their captain. He helped get them promoted back to Serie A and helped them stabilize before he left the club. Usually a left winger. He can cross. This is the first time he's ever played beyond Brazil or Saudi Arabia, which he did a few years before it went mainstream. Mateus Bogus is another designated player they brought in. We talked about him a little bit more, Joe and Taylor and I, not Graham. Thrived as a third option with LAFC, struggled when the stars were absent. His best season, the only season, in fact, that he scored more than 4 goals in his career was in 2024, when he was kind of the tertiary option in attack behind Denis Bouanga and Olivier Giroud's sleepwalking act. Lucas Halter comes in as a center back from Botafogo. No shame in this. He couldn't really stick in Botafogo's lineup. He was a starter upon signing and then just, got dropped down the pecking order. We saw how good they were at the Club World Cup, and thereafter reportedly below a $2 million transfer. That could be good value for a 25-year-old center back. Agustin Bozat is another one who intrigues me. He's a defensive midfielder from Argentina. Played, he was with Boca Juniors for 7 years, played 3 games, so that's not terribly much of a run out, and just one of those years was on loan. But he was regular with Velez Sarsfield, good long passer, aggressive tackler, draws fouls. And Hector Herrera's back. Don't expect a ton this time around. He was playing 20 minutes a game off the bench for Toluca. But he also did wonders to help establish the culture of what was working in 23 and 24. And so having him back could be good from that. Ben Olsen, also back. The manager, big changes, of course, from 23 and 24 with all the squad turnover that they needed to do at the high end. And then now, obviously, kind of just turning over the underside of the squad as well. Fewer attacking third possessions wins. They eased the press a little bit more without Hector Herrera as well. More fouls, more shots from set pieces, saw less possession. Just, not really as clear of an identity as we'd seen from them in 23 and 24. And it is game to game, there wasn't a lot of consistency in the game model compared to past years. They do have some key players coming back. Again, I'm kind of more interested in the guys that they brought in than a lot of the guys who are still there, though there are only 9 or 10 of them. Jack McGlynn, probably the headliner, year 2 as a focal point. His first year, I thought he did pretty well, credibly, just considering his age and the fact that he wasn't used to playing in a game model like that. How Ben Olsen plays compared to how Jim Curtin wanted to play. Really good at kind of some of that middle third stuff when you look at his passing, his getting into spaces to help facilitate the possession, not as much end product, but 6 goals, 6 assists, something like that. Felipe Andrade led the team in goals added, which is mostly his defensive work at left back. He's one of the few holdovers along the defensive line. Ezequiel Ponce is the third DP, 10 goals and assists. Kind of underwhelming for an Argentine striker on a designated player, but so were his underlying numbers. So hopefully the service gets there, and when he has better distribution, he'll have better chances. And they're probably running back their goalkeeper committee. One of the things that was really strange is 4 different goalkeepers played at least twice for them last season, and all 4 of them are back on the roster. Jonathan Bond, as we illustrated yesterday, has had the poorest return on expected goals conceded since 2019 among all MLS goalkeepers. Jimmy Maurer and Andrew Tarbell are veteran backups. I kind of like Blake Gillingham. I think it might be worth giving him more of a go. He only started a couple of times, but he did have the best shot-stopping metrics. He comes out of Creighton, so, go Blue Jays. And, like we were talking about with Toronto, sometimes it's good to just let the unproven guy get a shot rather than going with the guys who have proven that they're not really goalkeeping at an MLS level. And as for my very specific prediction, Mateus Bogus, again, was brought in to be sort of the focal point of this attack. When you look at how it's constructed, it's not clear if he's going to play as an 8, if he's going to be playing off of a wing, maybe as some sort of withdrawn 9 if they move Ezequiel Ponce. But my very specific prediction is that Jack McGlynn will have more goal contributions, that's goals and assists, than Mateusz Bogusz. Because I think that a lot of the goals that Mateusz Bogusz could score would probably be assisted by McGlynn. And I think that McGlynn also just offers a bit more of a dynamic threat to shoot from beyond the box and set up assists. So it could be an interesting season. Joe, you kind of framed him as like a 7th through 13th in the West Club. I think that's bang on. There's scenarios where you can really talk about, I can see them squeaking into the playoffs, and I can see them being one of the top 9 teams in the conference, but much higher than 7th, maybe a stretch still this year.
I think so. And Houston are a weird team, man, because I totally agree with you, Jeff, that I think they got better. Like, I think if you look at the talent that they brought in, they're going to be a better team this year than they were last year. At least they have better players. There's a couple of things I don't understand about this Dynamo team. First, they brought in a bunch of old dudes this offseason. I mean, really, Guilherme is a past his prime designated player who's really not produced anywhere at a good level. That's not to say he won't be good in MLS. I mean, I don't think he will be, but maybe he will be. They brought in Ache again. They brought in Buzat, who is over 30 center mid, who's presumably going to be a starter. I mean, this is just they're an old team, and I don't understand why you're going old when you're not going to contend. And I don't even think the Dynamo can picture themselves contending this year. I mean, maybe they're a lot higher internally than I think anybody is on the outside, but I just don't see it. So what is the rationale behind how they've spent this offseason on players that are old? That's one thing I don't understand. The other thing I don't understand is just how the pieces all fit together. And maybe I'll use a not new player as an example of this. When the Dynamo traded for Jack McGlynn, the Cashford Jack McGlynn from the Philadelphia Union, he comes into the team, and Pat Onstad says, I think something really smart. They just moved on from Hector Herrera and his saliva with him. And Jack McGlynn, Onstad said, he's going to do a lot of things that Hector Herrera could do for us in our double pivot. And then after like 6 games, they move him out of the double pivot and into the attack. And that's not to say that was a bad decision in a vacuum, because I think McGlynn was good in the attack. You mentioned it, Jeff. He was productive last year, and I think can be really good in that role. But how did the vision change that quickly? Or why did the vision change that quickly when you'd presumably done all this scouting on a guy that you wanted to play in a specific role, and then you change it, and now you bring Hector Herrera back in, which, again, in a vacuum, I don't dislike that as a move. But I just don't really know what the Dynamo are building towards anymore. I thought I knew for a while, and I don't know, and I don't know how these pieces fit together, and I'm pretty sure the top-end talent isn't there for them to be a real contender. So they're an old, middle-of-the-road Western Conference team without a real vision. I don't know. I'm not trying to be too harsh, but that's sort of my perception from the outside.
Yeah, and look, when you have Jack McGlynn, you would assume that your window of opportunity is projected to be at least 2 years down the road, right? Because, again, he is so relatively young to be the focal point of a midfield and the guy who's going to lead your team in touches. And Mateusz Bogusz comes in, he's 24 years old right now, turns 25 in the summer. So I'm with you. Like, some of this is really incongruent. I wonder if it's seeing the opportunity to get back in the playoffs, just given some chopping and changing in the middle class of the Western Conference. And so then you get home playoff revenue, mid-market owners love that, and they love to recoup only if they make the playoffs. It's kind of become like qualifying for Europe in some ways in terms of the willingness to spend, but to scale of magnitudes. But, with Houston, I just wonder if it's okay. We need to see that fans are going to show up to playoff games before we really invest in a team that could go on a deep playoff run. That might be giving them way too much credit, but that's also not really giving them much credit at all, is it? If they're waiting until they win to try winning. So,
wow. All right. Thank you very much, Jeff. Maybe not the Dynamos their name purports them to be this season, but we shall see. Why don't we go now to the LA Galaxy? Taylor Rockwell's going to tell us all about them. Taylor, great in 24. Garbage last season. Not the best title defender last season. So who knows what's going to happen in this campaign. What I do know, Taylor,
there we go,
is that Los Angeles has more cars than people with driver's licenses. That's a wild fact.
Wow.
To me. Over 6
Jay Leno
million.
lives there. He has like 6,000 cars.
Pele has 6,001 cars,
Taylor. He just can't stop.
There are over 6 million registered vehicles in LA County, 5 million are Jay Leno's, as we've established. But that's more than the number of driver's licenses that are issued in LA County. So cars massively outnumbering people being legally able to drive them. That's cool.
It's a perfect city with no traffic issues whatsoever. That's what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
That's
that accurate?
correct.
We'll find out this summer. I can't wait. I've heard LA traffic, super simple and not at all complex and infuriating.
That's right. We'll be talking about road names casually in conversation like that SNL sketch told us we are destined to be doing this summer. But for now, Taylor, will the LA Galaxy...
to that segue?
Yeah,
I take the 404 to that segue.
Yeah. That's it. We're starting already. Taylor, will the LA Galaxy be driven towards glory this year? Let us know.
Probably not. That's my answer. That is my preview for the Galaxy, but we'll find out. Because when last we left them, times was tough, and now that we're here, times is maybe tougher. We'll find out. They win MLS Cup in 2024, as Ryan said. They kind of leveraged the following season to make that happen, especially so once you find out that Ricky Puig is going to be out for the whole campaign, which he was, and then will be again this time round. Confirmed that his knee injury has kept him out, and so the Galaxy then have to kind of figure out how to make things work in a better way than they did last year, and I think that they have done that, because in Puig's absence, they are 14th in the West, only 30 points on the season, and it was a pretty uninspiring campaign, and I think they recognize they can't really afford to do that 2 times in a row, with Miami doing what they're doing, with LAFC doing what they're doing, and just honestly, with the Galaxy being a historically significant and strong team, you want to stay competitive, but you also have a little bit of, I don't know, desire to remind everybody that you are one of the biggest clubs, and I think that they've made smart moves that aren't pushing them into that like Inter-Miami stratosphere, but I think are putting them on much more solid footing for this season. So they put Ricky Puig on the season-ending injury list, which frees up that designated player spot temporarily for the season, and then they go out and get João Klaus as their 3rd designated player. And I believe Joe wrote that this is the best supporting cast he has worked with since he arrived in Major League Soccer, and I think the attacking options around him bear that out. So I think he will be an answer to the question of how do they score goals or how do they score more goals that they had in Ricky Puig's absence and in Dejan Jovelic's absence, who leaves after that title-winning campaign, goes to Sporting KC, and I don't think the Galaxy really found a successful option without him there. But this is the same Galaxy team that we've always talked about as being one that kind of spends on the attack, maybe spends on the midfield, and then brings in 40-year-olds to play in defense. And they haven't really done that this year. If anything, they've made really smart defensive moves that I think make them a lot better. They bring in Jakub Glesnes, acquired via trade with the Philadelphia Union, former MLS Defender of the Year. He's only 31 years old. And then they bring in Justin Hack, who's only 24 years old, from NYCFC with a trade. Could play in the midfield, could play as a center back. Just gives them a little bit of flexibility and variety. Most of the previews I have read have him partnering Glesnes in a back 4 as the 2 center backs. But you could have Maya Yoshida, who is the Galaxy captain, also starting, which maybe pushes Hack into the midfield. But as I said, just different options there for Greg Vanney, the Galaxy manager, who went with a slightly more direct approach last year. Galaxy's still comfortable with the ball, but when you have Marco Reus pulling the strings and he is very intermittently fully healthy, you kind of have to work with what you got. And that might mean Joseph Paintsel and Gabriel Peck out wide. That might mean maybe a youngster getting some minutes or somebody like Eric Tommy who comes in via transfer. 20 goals in 120 matches for Sporting Kansas City in his time there. So he gives you some like veteran spice out wide. They do have different attacking options, but it still feels like it would be João Klaus through the middle, Marco Reus hopefully pulling strings, and then creative attackers in different ways out wide, causing chaos. 4-4-2 defensively, can still press to some extent, but they're not going to be an all-out kind of ruthless style of pressing. Because, it's Los Angeles, man. You got to sit off. You got to have some fun. You got to take your time. In terms of other key players, I want to go back to him. Justin Hack, as I said, played the majority of last season as a left center back. Started Coachella preseason, which is still a confusing concept to me, as a number 6, at least in one game. So I think we'll see him kind of switching between the two based on what the Galaxy need and based on where they have availability elsewhere. In the middle, if it's not Hack, then my assumption is that it's Edwin Sorillo and Lucas Sanabria. And Lucas Sanabria is one I wanted to spotlight for a moment. 1,000+ minutes last season despite injuries. 21 matches, 12 starts. He's a 22-year-old Uruguayan. He's on the U22 initiative. And I think he's a player who I'm guessing will end up starting, provided he is fully fit, like much closer to like 30 games this season, and I think gets a lot more minutes. That would be my hope for the Galaxy because I think he can do a lot for them. I think he can do a lot on the defensive side, going into challenges, being a kind of physical presence, but then also can pop up in useful spots in the attack. Has a lot of fitness, has a lot of range to the way he plays. I believe Joe Lowry called him rangy, in fact. So I think there is some versatility through the middle. I look forward to Jeff and Joe lending their thoughts on that midfield and the way the Galaxy will play. But I think it's roughly that, kind of a 4-2-3-1 base shape, 4-4-2 defensively with Marco Reus standing still and not doing much defensive work because, come on, it's Marco Reus. I have 2 very specific predictions because they're sort of together. I think they like increase the rareness of it. But number one is that I think the Galaxy will sign a goalkeeper. I'm not going to be so bold like I was with San Diego last year and guarantee that it will be Matt Turner. But I think they will be a competitive team, and I think they will be nearer the top of the West than the bottom, certainly. I think they will be comfortably in the playoff spots, and I think they will be good enough that at some point they're going to think, we could maybe make a run here. We could maybe, if we catch like the right formula, we could do something, but maybe not with goalkeepers. You've got Novak Mitrovic ranked below average in goals versus expected goals. He was 20th in the league last year. You've got J.C. Marcinkowski and Brady Scott as the other options. But none of them, I think, are like fully inspiring and feel like they're fully prepared to take the reins and be the man this season. I was wrong with San Diego. I might be wrong here. But that feels like an area where if the Galaxy do start to string some results together, do feel like maybe they could be a contender, that's one area of vulnerability that I think they would want to shore up. So the Galaxy will sign a goalkeeper, and then João Klaus will have an MLS career best year. Thus far, his best seasons would be 2023 and 2025 when he scored 10 goals and got 2 assists. I'm saying he eclipses both of those numbers this season. So more than 10 goals, more than 2 assists. But I would guess like comfortably so, as long as he is fit for most of the campaign. I think the options he has around him, I think Paintsel kind of taking people on and bringing defenders over is going to open up opportunities for Klaus in the middle. Marco Reus kind of threading needles on occasion, Gabriel Peck on the other side, and then just other options around. I think that the Galaxy can be really good on set pieces. I think João Klaus can be a part of that. If they are pressing, I think he can be a part of that. So I think he gives them different looks, makes them stronger, and has a career best MLS year. That is my Galaxy preview. Over to Kelvin Yajoa and Jeff Ruder to tear that apart.
I'll leave, Jeff, I want to hear your thoughts on the midfield setup because I honestly don't know what that's going to look like. But as far as the goalkeeper, Taylor, I think that's a good shout. I think goalkeeper is an area of weakness for the Galaxy, probably their biggest area of weakness. I don't know if it's going to be a goalkeeper. I do know that the Galaxy are interested in making one more move in this transfer window. So I'll leave that there. I don't know exactly where that's going to be. But this team might not be done with their business. I don't know if that's going to be in goal, like I said, or elsewhere. Jeff, what do you think about Taylor's midfield query?
It looks like you really do have a team that you're just waiting, hoping desperately that Riqui Puig can miraculously just kind of pop up. And everything around it makes sense for him to immediately hit the ground running. Like, Taylor, you really laid out the construction of the roster and how it's retooled quite well because it's so clear compared to last offseason how different the tone was and how much better they were able to prepare. And this is where like the pains of the first 13 games or whatever it was last year where they didn't win a single one. This is what it was for. It wasn't just because they were bad at soccer suddenly and everyone forgot how to play. It was that they needed to get themselves out of the contracts that would prohibit them from being able to evolve the squad the way they have. And you look at the center backs, and that is so much better than the defensive bedrock that they had when they won MLS Cup in 2024. You look at, I love your VSP on João Klaus as well. I just think that in a system like this, I think he's going to get more dependable service. I think that he's going to be able to have more interplay where he can kind of serve as that fulcrum who does, that classic but underrated center forward thing where you have your back to goal, you collect the ball, and then you're able to kind of dish it over your shoulder into the half space, and that's where your wingers are going to feast. And he's still really good at that ball, right? And there are very few who can play that sort of Harry Kane stuff. So, I see it. I see it there. I agree with you. The missing piece is the reason it's a question, because right now it does look like a couple of placeholders. It also looks like you maybe don't have the clearest sense of who's going to partner. If it was Riqui Puig, now they have a year to figure that out, and so maybe this is more of an open trial to see who is a better sort of stylistic companion of sorts. But for now, I think it's credible enough where it won't get completely overrun in games like we're seeing with some other midfields right now, especially double pivots in MLS.
Wonderful stuff. There we go. Sorry.
If you were going to reinforce, then sorry, Ryan. What if not goalkeeper? Would it be central midfield? If you could, is that where you would look, either in the attack or maybe for Edwin Cerrillo?
Probably. I mean, I think Cerrillo's a fine starting number 6 in this league. I don't know that they need to worry a ton about that spot because they've got both him and Hack who can play there. I think the 8. I really think that the spots in this team that maybe need a little bit of juice are goalkeeper, left back, and then the number 8 spot. Really, I mean, the attack is not going to be what it could be ultimately because Puig is missing and there is a Puig-shaped hole in this team. But the 8, you're counting on Sanabria or Elijah Winder to be pretty good this year, and those are both gambles, but they could both pay out. So I I don't know exactly where I would add to this team. I think goalkeeper probably is, as I said, the biggest need.
I'm trying to think of what profile of 8 makes the most sense if I'm actually like looking like the ideal Ricky Puig companion. It's probably someone who can move the ball quickly, right? And let Ricky Puig be the one who carries it, shuttles around, does his thing where he kind of moves the entire field of players around him, like constellations almost, as he's trying to set up his path forward, and get someone who he can just routinely dump it off to, but physically can keep up and get in those passing lanes. I think would be something that would help him as they get back in 2027 sprint season. Hopefully he's back by then. I miss watching Ricky Puig, guys, so much.
I'm hoping the constellations pun was a galaxy.
Oh, that was
related.
good.
Yeah, that was very good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear with listeners. Ryan's one note before we started recording was longer. These episodes must be longer. So I'm glad I can make that happen by asking one more question. They did let Diego Fagundes walk. His contract expired. There is much speculation that they will find a way to bring him back in some way on some sort of deal. If that happens, does that move the needle for you at all?
Not really.
A little bit. No, I think a little bit, because I think that he is one of players you can bring in on a salary in the band that they can have. I think he's one of the most effective end product contributors. I think he's someone who can shoot when he's in form, but he certainly can create chances. And I think that anytime you can bring in that variety to alternate, give Paintsel and Peck a little bit of a breather. I mean, we talked about Eric Tomey a little bit last week at one point, but I think it helps. I think it's better than the players that they have. It's an upgrade.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely helps. It doesn't really move the needle for me a lot. I just think Eric Tomey is the new and improved Diego Fagundes, and I'd rather all of the minutes for a backup. Like, Fagundes is a backup and Tomey is a backup. I'd rather all the backup minutes go to Tomey. But yes, if you could just give me Diego Fagundes on a really low cap number, I would take it if I was the Galaxy.
Okay, very good. LA Galaxy, check. Up next, LAFC, but not before a quick break to learn about some incredible goods and services. Back shortly. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our 2026 Major League Soccer previews. We go now across town to LAFC. Graham Rudham's going to tell us all about the tenants of BMO Stadium. But Graham, I've got a little fact about that stadium. You want to hear it?
I do indeed.
Earmuffs if kids are in the car. BMO Stadium is on the site of a former brothel. Fun fact for you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the site, which was Exposition Park, was once hosted horse racing and camel racing, and one of Los Angeles' most notorious brothels as well. The area was used as an agricultural fairground and racetrack where those animals raced. And, of course, when you have camel racing, naturally, you have a stylish brothel on site as well. So there you go, built on a house of ill repute, Graham.
I mean, those are the three main zoning categories in California, I believe. Camel racing, brothels, and what was the third thing?
Soccer stadiums, I guess.
Soccer stadiums, yeah. Those are the three. I thought you were going to give us a fact about the price of parking, because you have not shied away from telling us that in the past.
We all know that. But also, there are 6 million registered camels in LA County, but only that's more than people who are licensed to ride them. Did you know that?
I'm more excited to encounter the 6 million camels than the 6 million vehicles this summer. Anyway, let's get started with LAFC. As much as I want to talk about camels, I'm having a great
Come back to it.
Yeah, and hopefully for LAFC's sake, they're going to have a great time in 2026. 2025 was like, how would I describe it, a busy year for LAFC. It was a weird year with lots of different phases. They played in the Champions Cup. They also qualified for the Club World Cup, which was unexpected. Thanks for that, FIFA. They had that big win over Club America, but then the tournament itself was a bit of a squelch for them. They were decent against Chelsea, but then lost to Esperance, which stuck in the throat. That probably should have been a win. And of the three MLS teams, they were probably the most underwhelming of that trio. And it kind of felt like the season was split into two. So underwhelming described the first half, right? They had Under on loan, they had Olivier Giroud. It was announced in April that Steve Cherundolo would also be leaving at the end of the year. So a lot of things were in flux for LAFC through the first half of the year. And then in the second half, they managed to offload Giroud, who just never came good for them, and they kind of gave up on him, rightly so. And then crucially, they brought in a guy called Son Heung-min, who struck up an instant partnership with Denny Bouanga. The two of them scored goals for fun in the second half of the year. Everything was golden again. They kind of rounded out into being like genuine cup contenders, I guess. Finished third in the West, looked a good bet to make MLS Cup until they were knocked out of the playoffs by Vancouver on penalties. So now we're entering 2026, and obviously Cherundolo has gone as he trailed earlier in the year. Assistant Mark Dos Santos has been promoted to the head coach job, which I don't know, that's a marquee job, and as a neutral I wanted that to be, some of the speculation was fun, like I don't know if any of it was actually genuine, but Big Ange being linked with that job was fun, and I kind of wanted a name like that, and I know some LAFC fans wanted an appointment of that ilk as well, even if it doesn't really feel like a John Thorrington sort of appointment. But I guess the idea is that Dos Santos will bring some continuity. Whether fans want that after 3-4 years of Steve Trundle, he knows the club. Nobody doubts his soccer knowledge either. I've read so much about how interested he is in soccer around the world. Obviously his CV kind of reflects that as well. Not really much to speak of in terms of player departures. Trundle, obviously the manager, is the big one. Yoyo Boa had his contract mutually terminated after he was suspended by the league for violating rules. That was speculated to be betting related, but we don't know that for sure. In terms of incoming players, Stephen Eustáquio is the headline new signing. Of course, an experienced Canadian international, someone that listeners will be very familiar with. He comes in from Porto. He will replace we think he'll replace the injured Igor Jesus. More on that later on, where he's actually going to play in that central midfield unit. I guess the other theory is that he could actually play in like a slightly more advanced role where LAFC can get even more out of his ability on the ball. Amin Budry also came in from Venezia. He's a 20-year-old, Sweden U21 international who seems like he's going to get minutes in the midfield unit as well. And then Jacob Schaffelberg, who obviously listeners will know, kind of has been around the block in MLS for a while, another Canadian international, and he's another notable addition to this team. He is going to provide a bit of vertical threat, which is a good thing for LAFC to have on that right side to maybe balance things out a little bit with Boanga and Son kind of shaded to the left. As I mentioned earlier, Marc Dos Santos, he has stepped up into the head coach position, someone who has a really long CV for someone who is still only 48. You could look on the positive side of that, which is he has had experiences in Canada and in the USL. He's also worked with 3 different clubs in Brazil. The negative of that is he hasn't really made it stick anywhere. Obviously, he was at Vancouver for a couple seasons, but his win percentage there was pretty low. I know Vancouver were in a bad state, a bad position at that time, but I know some LAFC fans are a bit concerned about the changing of expectations of his previous experience and then coming into an LAFC team and a club that basically expects to challenge for the biggest honours in every competition that they play in. Tactically, it seems likely it's going to be a 4-3-3 that is a 3-4-1-2 or a 3-4-2-1 in some phases. Basically, the TLDR of this tactical framework is to harness Boanga and Son as much as possible. They're your 2 key difference makers. They're your star players. They seem to have a chemistry and understanding together, so you want to get them into positions where they can decide as many matches as possible. Last season it was 2 6s and an 8 in central midfield. Sometimes LAFC want that, or their fans, they want that to be the other way round, and as I've kind of teased, I think that midfield is going to tell us a lot about what sort of team LAFC are going to be this year, because obviously a big storyline with Steve Trundle's LAFC was they were kind of a compact and counter team, a team that would play on the break. That was key to their success. But can Dos Santos turn LFC into a more expansive team? And you could argue with Eustáquio coming in, they have someone who's going to help them do that. They were ranked 9th for average possession share last season, which isn't bad. But for a team with LAFC's talent level, you might expect them to control games a little bit higher up the field this season. So we'll see if they're able to do that this year. In terms of key players, you've probably heard of a few of them, not least because I've already mentioned them. Son and Boanga, they are the reason to watch LAFC. I feel very silly for ever questioning if Boanga and Son would work together as a pairing, which was definitely a talking point when Son arrived last year. Obviously, positionally, relatively similar, but they were electric in the second half of last season. And Son has most frequently been the one through the middle. Boanga's been used in his usual position on the left, although there is obviously some dovetailing between the two. I expect Eustáquio's going to be the possession hub for this LAFC team. I've got a lot of stock in him making a big difference to this team this year. And then that midfield unit, you've also got Timothy Tillman, Mark Delgado, Budry, who I mentioned. They've got some decent options in that area. And then at the back, there's Ryan Porteous, the Butcher of Leith, as we affectionately know him in Scotland. Ryan Hollingshead and Sergio Palencia will be the starting fullbacks this year again. Hollingshead is 35 and maybe isn't the most defensively astute at this stage of his career. And then you've got Eddie Segura alongside Ryan Porteous. Aaron Long will return later in the year from injury, so that could be an important boost to have him back as well. And then in goal, I can't believe I've actually got this far without mentioning it. Is this just anti-goalkeeper bias? I guess the other globally recognisable name in this team would be Hugo Lloris, who is still one of the best goalkeepers in the league, even if he's not at the level of like a few years ago when he was one of the best goalkeepers in Europe. My VSP is not going to be about the goalkeeper or the defence. That's not the bit of LAFC's team that I want to focus on. I actually want to focus on their chance creation. Because as I've kind of referenced, last season there wasn't a whole lot that came through the midfield. If you look at their chance creation numbers, it's Bouanga and Son setting each other up, essentially, and then Hollingshead and Palencia as the fullbacks getting forward. And I think Eustáquio is going to change that dynamic, and so I think he's going to lead LAFC for chances created, which may seem like slightly low-hanging fruit, but I do think that says something about... I think the idea with VSPs is to provide an idea of how a team's going to change, or maybe one of the things they're going to do this season. And so I think that will say something about the way that they're more focused on having control of the ball in the centre of the pitch. So not big chances, because I can't account for Bouanga and Son just like passing to each other on the goal line over and over the course of the season. But chances created seems to be like a better gauge of maybe some plays that are starting deeper in the midfield. And I think Eustáquio is going to be a top signing for this team.
I think that's a really good way to frame that, Graham, because I think that when you look at the alternative, the obvious alternative, I think, to lead them in chances, if it wasn't going to be Son and Bouanga, would have been Schaffelberg in theory, right? When you just think who is the other player who's in that end of the field most often with them. It's hard to tell how much of this was because Sam Surridge is good in the air and how much of this is because of the skills that Jacob Schaffelberg has. I should probably try to find a way to get Canada data access, but at least with Nashville, he was much more prone to try to send the ball in the air for a header when he was crossing it down the right side than he was to play it low to ground. And I think that if you're going to be able to actually get those kind of either near post kind of converging diagonal runs where they tap it past the goalkeeper or try to hit it towards the far post, those are going to have to come in a little bit lower. And I haven't really seen that as part of Schaffelberg's game. So I was a little surprised when they sent $1 million of GAM to bring him in, but hey, I mean, that's the compliment they want. There are going to be a lot of phases he does well. He'll certainly help with their defensive pressure, though he is very increasingly foul prone in recent times. Just ask Canada about the Gold Cup last summer. So something to watch, but I think Eustáquio was just a slam dunk of a pickup and helps the game model so much with being able to retain possession and then also, work up the channels rather than having to spray it over the top.
Yeah, totally. The other player in the attacking third, I guess, that I'm interested in, and I'm interested in Jeff, your thoughts, and Joe as well. David Martinez, I know he's looked pretty good in the game, or is it 2 games? It's just a single game that LAFC, just the one game that LAFC have played, which Bouanga scored a hat-trick in, so they're starting fast. Is this the year Martinez becomes like a more important player for this LAFC team?
It's now or never, isn't it, Joe?
It kind of feels that way. I mean, I had for Bacchio last year. I predicted he'd be the best young player in MLS. I have sold some of my stock because it seems like there's just been a lot going on for him in LA, and maybe he and Cherundolo didn't totally get on. That's just pure speculation. Like there's no inside info there whatsoever. But I mean, the dude got the first start of the year in a full strength LAFC team basically, and looked amazing. I mean, granted, LAFC was far better than their opposition there, but Martinez is the most talented non-Bouanga, non-Sun player in this team. And I don't think it's especially close. Maybe Boudry and Eustáquio are in that conversation, but certainly among the attackers, the dude is amazing. Like Champions League level potential sort of player, but he just needs to get on the field, and he couldn't do it consistently under Cherundolo. So I agree, Jeff. I like that framing. It sort of feels like it's been, okay, next year. Well, this is probably the last year you can really say that.
There we go. Thank you very much. That's LAFC. We go now to Minnesota United. We'll find the person on the panel who's most connected to St. Paul, Minnesota. Joe Lowry is going to tell us all about Minnesota United. A fun fact for you, which Jeff might know, almost certainly will know, that Minnesota has so many lakes that if you spent one day at each lake, it would take you over 30 years to visit them all. 11,842 lakes in Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes. There you go.
Amazing. And that's what they have, one fewer people registered to swim in lakes than they have lakes.
Correct.
Is the stat as well.
Lake licenses are hard to come by in Minnesota, but they are handing them out. There you go. Will Minnesota United sink or swim, Joe?
There it is. I was waiting. I think they will swim. Maybe not as fast as everybody, but I think they'll swim faster than many teams. Let's put it that way. Where we left Minnesota United last season, 58 points, 4th in the West, 8th in the league. It was a good year for Minnesota, to be clear, but sort of a year of almosts. And it was a year of them forming an identity as well. The Loons reached the semifinals of the U.S. Open Cup, but fell at home to Austin FC in September. Their MLS Cup hopes were dashed 2 games away from the trophy thanks to San Diego in the Western Conference semifinals. Those are sort of the almosts. I'll be honest, I was more interested in the identity development that Minnesota United really had, and I think it crystallized last year. Although, maybe not, and maybe we're going to learn more about that later on in this preview. They sort of had been reborn, Minnesota, away from what they were when they first joined MLS, which I don't really know what they were, into a data-driven team that was going to try to be this budget-beating club, where Minnesota aren't going to get a whole lot of support in terms of first-team salary spend from ownership, and they understand that. Khalid El-Ahmad understands that, and he's running the front office. But they really emphasized scouting undervalued talent and set pieces and clever defending and building a tactical plan around, hey, let's go get budget guys that can work really hard, can boom long balls up, and can win second balls. They sort of became MLS's Brentford last year, though. I mean, the context is different because there's no Manchester City in MLS, right? So the spending is not as disparate in MLS as it is in the Premier League. But it was a very interesting identity, and I think the Loons were doing something that really no other team in MLS was doing. Now, a lot has changed over the offseason. I think in general those principles still apply, but we've seen some real shifts. The first, and maybe the most relevant outgoing, is Eric Ramsey, the manager, just shy of 2 seasons in Minnesota, became one of the more well-regarded coaches in MLS, went to West Brom, now is maybe going to get fired any day now. We'll see how that goes. It's hire and fire a coach winter, I guess. I don't know. Hire and fire an MLS coach hot winter. I don't know what it is, but
Flow
that's
off the
basically
tongue.
where we're
Get
at.
Dua
I
Lipa
think,
in the studio. We're
I
here.
think that
We're
rolls
ready.
off the tongue.
It's got a ring to it.
Yeah, I think so. A certain sort of dissonant ring. He's out,
Still a
and replaced him is Cam Knowles. So Cam Knowles was an assistant for Eric Ramsey. He was the interim in between Adrian Heath and Ramsey actually being hired. He's in this team, and the expectation is that the tactics are going to shift a little bit, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Other outgoings. Dane St. Clair, big outgoing. Goalkeeper of the year last year, one of the best goalkeepers in MLS on a regular basis. He left in free agency. Maybe Minnesota could have sent him a contract offer a little bit sooner that he would have liked, but he took less money at the end of the day to go play in Miami, and that's how it goes. That's the benefit of having Messi on your team, and Minnesota don't have that. Robin Ludd left in free agency in pursuit of better soccer, so he signed with Chicago Fire. Hassani Dotson left in free agency. He is now a Seattle Sounder. Joseph Rosales was traded, to Austin FC. We'll see how that goes. In terms of arrivals, I mentioned Cam Knowles already. James Rodriguez is here. I buried him kind of deep in the preview. Maybe not that deep, but he's here. I didn't see that coming. We've talked about this a bunch of times on the show, so I'm really not going to talk about it for all that long. He's going to be on a very low contract. He's certainly on a DP. He's on a 6-month loan with a team option for the second half of the year. I really don't know what to expect from Rodriguez. I don't think he's going to start at the very beginning of the season. Maybe he starts later on. He was pretty good for Lyon last year and did sort of play a full season's worth of minutes in the last calendar year. But he's also been on a bunch of teams in the last 5 years. So really what he looks like is a huge question mark. This is an interesting thing, not just because of James, but because of the identity. Where even though they're not paying James Rodriguez a lot of money, doesn't really seem to fit their hard-working, kind of hard-nosed, grab-the-lunch-pail lads mentality that I think has backed a lot of their success. So I do wonder how this is going to impact the team and going to impact their recruitment going forward, but that's something we'll file away because we just can't really know right now. Drake Callender's in to be the new starting goalkeeper. He was acquired in a trade from Charlotte FC. I think Callender's a really good goalkeeper. I think he'll do well. Maybe a half-step downgrade from St. Clair, but honestly not a huge one. Thomas Chankalai is in, and this is a very Minnesota move. They sent $100,000 to the New England Revolution, and now he's going to be a non-DP player for them. So the Revs wanted to get Chankalai off of his DP deal because they didn't think he was worth it. Minnesota said, well, he's probably not worth a DP deal, but he's worth something relatively close to that. And so now the 27-year-old attacking player is a Minnesota United player. I think he's going to start a lot of games for them on the left side. Tactically, this is going to be a really interesting team where they were the most aggressive set-piece team on the planet last year, not just in MLS. John Mueller wrote that for The Guardian. The numbers back up that they were more aggressive than anybody out there. They didn't really want to keep a whole lot of the ball. They were the most vertical passing team in MLS, according to American Soccer Analysis. In defense, they counter-pressed a lot, but then were happy to sit deep. So they didn't high-press, but they were really conservative when they didn't have the ball for long stretches. They posted the most defensive actions in a 25-yard radius arc around their own goal. So they were camped out in front of Dane St. Clair. That was Minnesota United last year. Cam Knowles, pretty much everything he said this year is, we're going to keep some of this stuff, but we are going to keep the ball more. We have an appetite to have a little bit more possession. We want some tighter central combinations. So I think Minnesota's identity is going to shift. I don't know how dramatically at the end of the day. I think defensively they'll be a fairly similar team where maybe they high press a little bit more, but they will still be comfortable dropping back and doing the dirty work in their own third. But I do wonder how much we'll see Minnesota pass the ball, especially with James Rodriguez signed. I don't think you even consider handing him a single dollar if you're not willing to use a little bit more of the ball. So all of the messaging seems to be pointing towards Minnesota changing their style a little bit. I'm curious how much and how much it matters. Key players, mentioned James Rodriguez. He's one of the biggest names in MLS. Joaquin Pereira has had interest circling around him, I believe, from both South America and from Europe. He's an attacking midfielder. He's probably going to be their most impactful player this year. Nectarios Triantis, I love this dude. He's a number 8. I've talked about him a bunch on the show. He might not make it past the summer in Minnesota. He's that good. He hopped in last year in the summer window and immediately looked like a best 11 caliber number 8 in this league. Box to box, Graham is nodding. He's got
Just
some
everyone
ties there.
everyone thought the same in Scotland when he was at Hibs before he went to Minnesota.
Yep.
So yeah, he's good.
100%. And he's a testament, Triantis, of how darn good Minnesota seemed to be at scouting. Like there's some criticisms I have about their roster, and I'll get to that shortly. But they find players, man. And their hit rate since El Ahmad has come in and they become more data-driven, which happened sort of just before he got there, and then he sort of accelerated that. It's amazing what they've done. And Triantis is a player and a half. Anthony Marcanic scored a bajillion goals as a left wing back last year. I guess he's somebody to watch. And then Kelvin Yeboah. And he's the starting number 9 for this team and what's probably going to be a 3-4-3 in possession. Maybe they'll shift the defensive shape a little bit. Yeboah is a good player. He was fine last year. He was pretty good, actually, his first year in MLS. But wasn't quite as good last year. He needs to step it up because there is still a Tani Oluwaseyi-sized hole in this team's attack, and it's a big problem for them. Yeboah needs to be really good because they sold Tani to Villarreal in the middle of last season, and it tanked their year, and I think they knew that was going to happen. And now they haven't replaced him. Like they've added Chancalay, which is great. They've added James Rodriguez, which is great. They've got a lot of these 10 kind of winger-type players. Don't know that you're relying on any of those guys to be Oluwaseyi. So you kind of need Yeboah to be Oluwaseyi, and you kind of need the rest of those guys to be Yeboah and themselves. So that's the criticism, is have you really replaced the biggest need that you had in your roster at the end of last season when you failed, basically when you came up short? And are you a better team today than you were at the start of last season? I just don't think the answer to that is yes. You might not be a worse team, but I don't know that this team's trophy window is seriously open. And I'll tie that into my VSP, where last year a big summer sale kind of tanked the year. I don't know that the exact same tanking thing is going to happen this year if a summer sale gets made, but I do think at least one player is going to leave for at least $4 million in the summer. That's my VSP. Joaquin Pereira could be that guy. Nectarios Triantis very much could be that guy. He's probably my pick for this. Marcanic, maybe. I mean, if a European team's looking to drop $4 million on a wing back, probably not that likely. I've got Jefferson Diaz stock as a right-sided center back. Still, there's a bunch of young attackers in this team that could hit. I think Triantis, again, is the most likely, but I'm betting one of them hits and makes a move to a pretty relevant European club for a multi-million-dollar fee, and that's the life of an MLS team right now with the calendar as it's constructed, and Minnesota felt it last year. They might feel it again this year.
Yeah, and I'll throw in Nicolas Lemera on the left side of the back line as well as another guy, Argentine center back, really good playing the ball. Joe, I like the framing of just like it feels like their title window has shrunk, and I couldn't agree more. I think when you look at how they responded to the interest in Tani Oluwaseyi, they didn't react in a way that really kept both the floor and the ceiling from falling, right? And then I don't really know if they've done enough. Now, I think they've raised the floor with some of their moves. I think you also look at, midfield depth. Hassani Dotson leaves. They're replacing with Peter Stroud, right? And I guess James is maybe the Robin Lod replacement, but it's probably Owen Jen getting more minutes realistically. Like, this just feels a bit more like mid-2010s Peter Vermees era, where it's like, it's a lot of veterans that you trust to execute the game model. You know what the game model is coming up against it, but they're going to give you a really tough game every single week. And does that win you trophies? Well, it didn't in Kansas City, right? And I think that an open cup here and there, I suppose, but for Minnesota right now, it's just it looks like right now they're kind of looking to see, is Yeboah someone to be part of that next trophy contention core or not. The only other thing I would say is that regarding St. Clair, like, I have it on pretty good authority. They did try to have talks with him during the season on a couple of occasions, and he was in the middle of kind of a flow state, as goalkeepers are prone to do when they're in form, and had said, I want to wait till the end of the postseason, and then, let's talk. And then those talks just didn't materialize in the way that they had been kind of expecting. This is for how the club is framing it internally anyway, per sources. So just interesting. Like, I think that calendar was about as good of a reaction as they possibly could have had. Very steady. Maybe will not have as many of those games where he's swinging the result on his own like we saw St. Clair have to do down the stretch for Minnesota. But overall, just really solid sort of squad from top to bottom with credible depth.
Very good. I always have to mention, when we mention Kelvin Yeboah, that he is one of the greatest nephews in all of soccer. Tony Yeboah, of course, his uncle. Scorer of two of the top 2 greatest Premier League goals. That's how I'm going to frame it.
Are both of them from the 90s, Ryan? In your opinion?
Not just in my opinion, Graham, but yes, very much they are.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to become a parody of yourself or anything.
I wouldn't. I also was going to ask, is he the greatest nephew in soccer? But then I remembered Frank Lampard's got quite a famous uncle in soccer as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he does.
He does. There we go. That was Minnesota United and a little riff thereon. Thank you very much for indulging that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's Portland Timbers and Real Salt Lake. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our MLS previews. It's going down. We yelling Timbers. Taylor Rockwell is going to tell us all about Portland right now. Which, Taylor, I don't know if you know, is home to the world's smallest park. What was the world's smallest park? I'll get there in a second. Mills End Park in Portland is 2 feet wide and has 1 tree. It's located in the middle of a street median and is officially recognised, or was officially recognised, as the world's smallest park until last year when a park in Japan that was even smaller came along. Can't believe that.
I don't like it.
Absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable. There you
Yeah,
go.
Come on, Portland. Up
I
your
gotta
game.
say, no, actually, I think it's good that this title left them. This is a joke, man. Like, this isn't a park. I don't want to hear it. It's just not. It's a median. Sorry.
It's got a tree. It's got grass.
Yeah, we have. You guys don't have medians anywhere where you live that have like agriculture in them. I feel like those are pretty common. I don't think you were special, Portland. It's probably good for this to be removed from you.
Wow. What do your medians have in Arizona? Like dirt and snakes?
Yeah, just scorpions. But I mean,
Got it.
it's agriculture adjacent, really.
Oh,
Yeah,
this
math.
is a plant
Don't
pot.
forget math.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a.
It's a park, Graham, the second biggest in
mean-
the world, second smallest in the world, I should say.
Second biggest.
I
Is
think
this
you
a
also
park
let
for
in with it
ants?
being the smallest heart in the world, which we all know belongs to Ryan Bailey. So, I'm just kidding. Ryan
Well,
is a
bless your
lovely big
heart, Taylor. Tell us about Portland and their ambitions. Will they be
I wanna
bigger
talk
than the
more about
world's smallest
median for a
park?
second because I kind of agree with Joe. Like, what makes
it's
it
a
a
joke.
park? Is just calling it a park that what makes it a park?
The
'Cause
city
you're
passed
right.
something that said it's a park. I'm not having it.
We got a lot of trees in our medians over here.
It
You
was
made
in
me
the-
question this now, Joe.
it was
You know
in-
what? That's suitable because I'm questioning a lot of things about the Portland Timbers. That will be my transition. I want to hold my hands up front and say, Portland listeners, Portland supporters, I think I'm going to apologize for this preview. I think there's a world in which this Timbers team is competitive and fun and scores a lot of goals. It is, as we've talked about before, a large number of ifs needing to happen for that to be the case in my mind. And I think that was like reading Joe's Portland preview. I think that was like, if this happens and if they do this and these 3 guys are good and that guy rediscovers his form and this one doesn't get injured and they bring in this, could be a good season for the Timbers. And I think that is an overstatement on my part. But I find them confusing because last season they're 8th in the West, 44 points, a very meh season overall. They overperformed defensively, which made up for a pretty poor attack, despite some of the signings they brought in. Their 37 goals score and 45.3 XG generated was good enough for the second worst attack in the West and worst attack of all playoff qualified teams. They underperformed their expected goals pretty significantly by about 10 goals. They were 15th in possession, 15th in pass accuracy, 17th in shots, 24th in goals scored. It's a lot of sort of middling numbers, and seen through one lens, so they weren't very good at anything, they weren't very bad at anything, but seen through another lens of like, yeah, maybe they didn't want the ball all the time, maybe they didn't want to press all the time, maybe they weren't trying to get as many shots in certain occasions. Like, there are worlds in which what they were doing made sense. I think there are more worlds in which what they were doing was just sort of underwhelming, and I think their offseason has been underwhelming on top of that. Inter Miami acquired David Ayala, the 23-year-old defensive midfielder, who, by all accounts, more or less held Portland's defense together for large stretches of the season. Others were involved, but he was the key contributor. They get $2 million or more from that move, so that's a positive. But then they also lose midfielder Cristian Paredes. He signs with Cerro Porteño in Paraguay. 8 seasons in Portland. He's another key defensive worker as well. And then they bring in Cole Bassett, a U22 initiative player. They bring him in from Colorado. He's a box-to-box midfielder. They spent $2.7 million to get him, but he is a dribbly midfielder. He is not a possession midfielder, and that is another kind of theme of what Portland have done. It seems like they've acquired a lot of players who want to dribble, want to take people on. In Christopher Velda's case, want to shoot a lot, but I'm not sure if that a consistent team makes. So it's an interesting signing, and I think it makes them more like interesting from an attacking standpoint, but I'm not sure it makes them a more cohesive team. And that is what Phil Neville, the manager, will once again be asked to do. He is still there after a somewhat forgettable campaign. Based on what I've read and seen, my guess is that they will play something like kind of a 4-2-3-1, occasionally a 3-4-3. Ball-playing center backs will be focused on kind of controlling the game and slow possession when they have it. And then dribbly midfielders and wide attacking options will try to take people on and create opportunities either for themselves or by taking people on, maybe going for the kind of like quick lateral pass to somebody who's now wide open. Whether or not that is effective and efficient remains to be seen. In terms of the key players that they do have, I think Finn Sturman is worth noting. He is one of the remaining kind of mainstays or reliable mainstays in the center of defense for Portland. He was, I think American Soccer Analysis described him as not a negative on the defensive side, as opposed to several of their other defenders. So that means he was better than them. Kamal Miller, looking in your direction. He's a 22-year-old left-footed center back who joined the Timbers in July of 2024. And honestly, it's not a surprise, but it is kind of a surprise at the same time to say that a key player for this Timbers team this season is going to be 39-year-old Diego Chara, because he is their defensive midfielder. Like, João Ortiz is there as a deputy, but João Ortiz, 29-year-old Ecuadorian, I think, so he'll deputized for 39-year-old. He's just a baby compared to Diego Chara, I suppose. But with the departures of Ayala and Paredes, I think he is more or less like the most reliable kind of defensive presence in that midfield. He's going to be 40 in April. I don't know how much he'll be able to handle this year. It was around 1,200 minutes last season, which was the fewest in his entire career with Portland, only 10 starts. Some of that due to injury, some of that due to roster build and construction. But if you don't have him as like starting more than half of your games, it's a really inexperienced midfield with not a ton of kind of defensive nous about it. So there are bright spots in this team. I mentioned him very briefly, but Christopher Velde, he's a designated player. Is it Veld or Velda? Did we ever settle that one?
I actually don't know, and I apologize for that.
Christopher is a 26-year-old. He'll probably be left winger, but likes a shot, likes shots from outside the box, likes shots from distance, likes shots up close, just wants to shoot, just wants to score, and did a little bit of that last season when he came over. Anthony will probably start on the right. He's a 24-year-old wide attacker with, I'm assuming Kevin Kelsey is going to be the striker for them this year. He's only 21 years old. Was joint top scorer, tied with two other players, including Felipe Mora, who's the other option to start up top. But this team just seems like they are still very much mid-build. I would be kind of excited about this team and what they've done, including buying out Jonathan Rodriguez to give them a third designated player opportunity. I think I'd be excited about this team if it were January. That it is close to the start of the season and there are this many holes, and I would argue this many big holes and this many big question marks around this team has me nervous. And so my very specific prediction is that Portland will have a bottom 5 defensive record in the league at the World Cup break, or excuse me, in the West at the World Cup break. The East is its own entity. But the West, I think, for where they were last season, even when things were bad, that defense was solid and kept them in games and helped them win games and kept them in playoff contention and obviously getting the playoff spot. I think you lose some of the players they've lost. You're relying on a lot of young players. And again, like the starting back line is most likely to be 23, 23, 22, and 23. So there's a world in which all of them come together and gel and you have a young back line that is the core of your team for years to come. But it's how quickly can that happen? They already had the 8th worst goals against record in the Western Conference, 14th overall in the league. The back line is less certain. Defensive midfield options are older or negligible or unproven. It seems also like because they're going to have more dribbling through the middle and out wide, they're going to be more open. I don't think that they're going to be as compact of a unit as they were. They certainly don't have the defensive stability behind them. So I just feel like they are going to be more open, and though they'll probably score a few more goals, I think they'll concede plenty as well. So around the World Cup break, I think they will be bottom 5 defensively in the West.
Oof. Sounds like a bit rough up in Portland then, Taylor.
As I said, though, like you read other previews, and some of the moves have kind of, their hands have been forced. Some of the moves have been smart. It just seems like there are a lot of, like, if David da Costa bounces back from a really underwhelming first year, some of which was limited by injury, if Kevin Kelsey can sort of prove to be a reliable goal scorer that we think he might be able to be, if Christopher, like, scores the goals that he can be as we think he can as a designated player, and kind of creates havoc and uncertainty. If Cole Bassett links that midfield and the defense and the attack and is a reliable performer for them, there's just so many ifs and ifs and ifs and ifs. They do have Jimmer Forey and Juan David Mosquera as their fullbacks. Both of them are pretty established. They signed more fullback depth in the in the winter. So again, there's depth, there's some improvement there, but it's a lot of unknowns and a lot of youth at the same time, or relative youth at the same time, that could make this team very good near the end of the season, could make them good at the start of next season. I'm not sure how good they will be at the start of this season.
Yeah, I'm not positive on really any part of the Timbers except for Christopher Veld, who I think is going to be really good this year. He was quite good when he arrived last year. The only thing I'll add, just as a positive note, is that Ned Grabavoy, this team CSO, said they're going to add 2 pieces still before the window closes. One is going to be a defensive midfielder, which, Taylor, you mentioned it, they need it, and the other is going to be probably a winger. So they're not done, but yeah, they kind of might be done in a different sense.
All right. That's the Portland Timbers. One more team to get to in this here episode. It is Real Salt Lake. Graham Ruthven's going to tell us all about them. Graham, would it shock you to learn my fact is based around urban planning?
No.
It certainly is. We all know that Salt Lake invented the grid traffic system. They had a kit that celebrated it famously. They are urban planning royalty, Graham. But here's a fun fact for you. Salt Lake City streets were designed...
There's the Real. They're royalty. Boom.
There
we did it. We finally figured it out.
Yep.
They don't need the Real Madrid affiliation when they've got that.
That's
more
actually
valuable.
where it came from. It's only pertaining to urban planning, which is, that makes perfect sense. Salt Lake City streets, though, were designed to be wide enough for a wagon to turn around without, and I quote, resorting to profanity. The city founder, Brigham Young, reportedly wanted the streets to be extra wide so settlers could comfortably maneuver their ox-drawn wagons and keep their tempers at the same time. So no stress when they're turning around those wagons. How about that for you? Take your credit.
I mean, unfortunately, last season I think there was a lot of profanity watching RSL and the way that they dropped away from the season before. So they finished 9th in the Western Conference. So they did snag that final playoff spot, and then they went out in the wild card round to Portland, and that was that. So while it wasn't an abject failure, it was a big drop off as a reference from the 2024 season when RSL were in the Shield race, I guess, and they were nowhere near that level last year. Certainly didn't help that they traded Chicho Arango to San Jose at the start of the year, and that was after Andres Gomez left midway through the 2024 season as well. So to lose those 2 attacking pieces in quick succession was a real blow, and RSL just never found a way to properly replace them. And the ownership situation paralysed them for a portion of the year, and then by the time they started to spend some money again, it was the summer and they were chasing their tail. And the players that they brought in didn't really hit. You had, I've never actually said this name out loud. I've done him in the fantasy game, but Ryan Cruz?
Rowan, I think? I
think we settled with Rowan with an apology attached every time.
Okay,
he's already gone, so at this point...
Yeah, he has gone, yeah. Spoiler alert. But he arrived last year. Olatunji arrived, Diogo Gonçalves, who was okay, Dominic Marzuch, but it just wasn't a great year for their signings. And so the hope is obviously that they hit on more of their signings this year. Morgan Giavogi, which is a great name to say. So I enjoy saying that one, Giavogi. He's come in from Lens in Ligue 1 for $5 million. He's a DP, and his numbers are pretty impressive as a forward who can operate in a number of different ways across the forward line. He was prolific for Paris FC. Not that one, the other one in Ligue 2 a couple seasons ago, and he had 8 goal contributions for St. Pauli in the Bundesliga last season as well. Stein Spearings, another great name, is probably going to be another new starter in central midfield. He has joined from Brøndby in Denmark. Lucas Engel has joined from Borough in the Champo via Cincinnati, of course, where he was on loan last year. He'll be the starting left-sided centre-back. And then Juan Manuel Sanabria will be the starting left wing back, and that feels like a big upgrade in that position for RSL. He was in Liga Mekis. He's broken into the Uruguayan national team recently. Very productive in an attacking sense, and so that could be someone who moves the needle for RSL. And then very quickly in terms of departures, Rowan, apologies, Cruz is gone, Gonçalves is gone, Willie Agada is gone. I don't feel like RSL fans should be sad about any of that, really. Brian Ojeda is probably the biggest loss, at least in terms of how much he played last year. He's gone to Orlando, but RSL got a decent chunk of GAM for him, so even that feels like a wise decision. Their head coach is Pablo Mastroeni. We all know Pablo by now. He is an MLS stalwart, both as a player and as a manager. This will be his 5th full season at RSL. And what's interesting about Mastroeni is, as a coach, RSL have, I guess, big picture, become a more possession-heavy team under him, although they did fall back from 5th for average possession share in 2024 to 9th last year. Nonetheless, this is a team that wants to have the ball. American Soccer Analysis, in their preview of RSL, they had them 10th for average defensive action height, which says, I guess, says something about their ability to press high. They are a relatively proactive team. In terms of their tactical framework, it's a 3-2-5, and then I guess like a 4-2-2 in attacking phases, and then 4-4-2 against the ball. That's fairly consistent. In terms of key players, I have to highlight my boy Diego Luna as my first key player because, frankly, I love the guy. I know we had this discussion about him a couple of weeks ago. I don't know what his ceiling is, Diego Luna. He's a bit confusing in that sense. It seems like he is destined to... So what was that, Jeff?
Taylor said Ballon d'Or.
Ballon d'Or, yeah. Well, I mean, if anyone's going to argue for Diego Luna Ballon d'Or, I think it's me. I have been his biggest fan. To my detriment when it comes to the national team. There's an episode out there somewhere from last year where I said he was going to start at the World Cup. I no longer think that, but I do think he is destined for Europe in the summer, possibly after the World Cup. So that is something that RSL will have to navigate. As I say, I don't know if Luna gets a lot better than he is now, but the reality is he is a very important player for RSL. He led the team for non-penalty goal contributions. Listeners already know what he offers. Getting in between the lines, wriggling away from tackles, getting into the final third. Kevork is another key player. I expect he will be a key player, and he'll probably play off the right with Luna off the left, but the two of them will have a lot of freedom. I want to see more of Xavier Gozo. We spoke about him on a USMNT weekly episode recently. Last year was a real breakthrough season for him. I hope we see even more of him this year. He got 1,800 minutes last year and scored 4 goals, 3 assists as well. I think he's a really exciting talent. And then in central midfield, it looks like being Spearings and Ellie as a sort of do-everything double pivot in this team. I mentioned Sanabria, on the left wing. As I said, could be a big upgrade for RSL. And if it's Gozo on the right as the right wing back, if that's how they fit Luna, Kevork, Gozo, and then Sanabria into this team, I think there's a world where there's a lot to be excited about in terms of those players for RSL. And then at the back, there's a good amount of experience between DeAndre Yedlin, of course, Justin Glad, and then Engel, of course, who isn't the oldest but played in MLS last year as well. And so to finish off with my VSP, I'm going a bit more... I think all of my VSPs until now have been largely kind of statistics led. I'm going a little bit more vibesy here because I think by the end of the year, a reputable publication will publish an article or a video or a podcast or something like that, and it can't be written by anyone, or it can't be this show, it can't be Jeff for The Guardian or Joe for Backheeled or one of Ryan's Bleacher Report listicles. But the gist of this article, the gist of this article will be Gozo has made RSL forget about Diego Luna. The headline can be Diego who or something along those lines. I think Luna is pretty much nailed on to leave in the summer, and Gozo after that point I think just takes over as the all-round attacking threat in this team. So I think in terms of a succession plan, RSL are actually pretty well sorted there.
Graham, I can be bought, first of all. There are other people that write for Backheel, not just me. So we can work something out here. If you get desperate later in the year, just hit me up.
Yeah. We can also use MLS partner Polymarket to make some more money out of this as well.
That's a really good point.
There we
That's
go.
a really good point.
It's not a gamble.
No, it's just a market prediction, really. That's what it is. Graham, I love that VSP. I mean, spoiler alert, we actually do have a piece on Xavier Gozo coming out for Backheel in the next couple of weeks. That will not be what you just titled it as, but it's going to look
Diego Huna
quite a bit. Yeah. And I think it's a really interesting sign in a good way, not in the Taylor Rockwell's wife way. I think it's an interesting sign in a good way for Xavier Gozo that RSL have been
out of context. That's
Very out of context.
Yeah,
All of
sorry.
us are just
No,
screeching halt.
I could see Jeff wondering what he's landed in.
I'm not even going to explain it.
It only
Taylor's
took
wife
4
is
days.
lovely. Taylor's wife is lovely. She plays the piano.
Is Ryan laughing or just asleep?
He's crying.
He's laughing. All right.
Embarrassed crying.
Anyway, Xavier Gozo. So I think it's a really good sign that RSL has basically shoehorned him in preseason, all preseason long. Their attack has gotten more crowded. Okay, maybe there's not minutes for you in the right half space. Why don't you try playing wingback? That's basically what's happened for them so far this season. They believe in him a lot, and they are finding ways to get him in the lineup. Yeah, Graham, it's a great VSP.
I'll back your bullishness on Juan Manuel Sanabria as well. I actually went out on a limb, and for our season predictions, which will be up on The Guardian one of these days here, it might be up by the time you listen to it, I've picked him as newcomer of the year for MLS. I am just so all in on this. Like, I think Kai Wagner has proven that, like, yes, left backs can be primary chance creators, and I think that his ability to ease some pressure on Diego Luna also means that that interplay could be so dangerous for a lot of teams in the Western Conference. Like, I don't know if you had that experience, like any of you guys, where it's like as you're researching for these season previews and catching up on the teams that you don't hear, like basically everyone but Miami, right? Like, what did you do with the rest of your squad? Like, there's only a few teams that I was like, wow, I am way more excited about them than I thought I was going into 2026, and RSL is probably at the front of that pack for me. Like, I just, the work that Kurt Schmidt continues to do there to get the squad turned over, to keep it, you know, within the constraints of the ownership as that has evolved, and now to grow into hopefully more support from this current ownership group. It's a really, really good roster right now.
Very good. And that was a really, really good MLS preview. We've got one more to go this week. In Friday's episode, we'll cover San Diego, San Jose, Seattle, Kansas City, St. Louis, and Vancouver. But for now, that's it. Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, my friend. It's been an interesting show.
As indeed. Joe Lowry, thank you for making it interesting right on the buzzer there.
Down with small parks.
Agreed. Despite your anti-Portland sentiment, I agree with you there, Joe. Thank you very much, Graham Ruthven.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
And thank you very much, Jeff Rutter.
Same time tomorrow.
Let's do it. Thank you very much, listener. You'll join us then. But for now, bye.